J.K. Rowling has been one of the big influences in my life ever since I was a child. I think my generation has been greatly influenced by her, actually. Lemony Snicket was one of the more unique writers that I've ever read, and George Orwell had this ability to bring the harsh reality of life, make it more real than the life that we were currently experiencing.
My bare hands can bear bears and bruise Zeus, but my birth since birth has not been boat coop seems obtuse, maybe too skewed. I won't maim, but I use my pain to aim for veins. The brink led the ink and lead to spray from veins. My bane may be vain, but I need worth in my name. My fears include an interlude where I'm arraigned in a system that is quite quaint. My dreams are to reign in terrain, to reign in, where it rains and rays, but the sun is waning. My future sons seem to be doomed to be raised with raised endorphins, but I guess that's part of the course for life's courses. Of course the world is inundated with the cries of orphans, or perhaps the weakened neighs of hoarse horses. I won't lessen the lesson. No need for schools to have weapons. The bell tolls the bell, it took its toll, a crack and now she's been deafened. We've been here for so long, but she still doesn't hear us across the fences. I'm not sure if being louder constitutes a shift in power. Maybe it'll never be our time, but maybe it is our hour. It's like they want to throw a veil over our veil. And sometimes I'd love a drink, but I'm finding that the ale ails. That's a change in vibe in this life. I still haven't felt like I have truly thrived. Maybe one day that'll change, but today is another day in which I live to survive.
Welcome to the show. Hello, I'm Professor Whitfield, and I'm the director of the Harlem Neighborhood Writers, or as we like to call ourselves, Harlem Renaissance 2. You just saw one of our bright young writers, Victor Palin, recite one of his poems. It's truly hot off the press. He hasn't even titled it yet. Victor writes mostly in the fantasy genre. You'll hear more from him in future episodes. The Harlem Neighborhood Writers Group was founded in 2014 and is comprised of over 400 members. Many of our members are accomplished and published. Others are just beginning their journey as writers. Nearly all genres are represented in our group, from poetry to novel, sci-fi, theater, and screenplay writers. Our goal is to assist and support writers as they develop their craft. We do this by meeting, reading, critiquing each other's work, and providing platforms such as today's show for writers to showcase their work. With each episode, we'll focus on original material written by our members. If you're interested in being part of our group, just contact us via the information on the screen. It's free to join and all are welcome. In today's show, we present you Alexandra Williams-Fleck. Alexandra works in the publishing field and she writes in the fan fiction genre. She is going to read from her upcoming book, Princess. Let's take a trip back in time to a world when feudal lords ruled. Here, Alexandra explores the struggles of a young noble trying to regain a stolen kingdom. But is that truly the most important struggle? Princess by Alexandra Williams-Fleck.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Williams-Fleck, and I am part of the Harlem Neighborhood Writers Group. I've been a member for about 6 months since moving to Harlem from Brooklyn earlier this year. And I really enjoy being a member because everyone is really supportive at the same time that they kind of challenge your work, but in intellectual ways. They always want to make sure that you've considered multiple points of view. They always want to understand what it is that you've written if they, maybe come from a different background or have different experiences than you do. So I find it to be a very supportive community, sometimes a challenging community, but a community that I think makes me better as a writer. I started this book for National Novel Writing Month last year, and I wrote, I think I got to like 100 pages and I got completely stuck. And then I was working with a literary agent as an intern And I was asking, like, what's more important to you, strong characters or strong plot? Because I felt like my plot was kind of weak. And he said, well, I'll take strong characters over strong plot because I can get pulled into the story. So I went back to my story and I was looking at it and I was like, well, the plot is thin, but I feel like my characters are kind of thin too. So I was like, you know what? Let's start over and let's plan everything. And so I went through and figured out like all the different scenes that I needed and like the character development. And for me, I don't really like planning because I feel like it's constrictive. Like I feel like there's no room for me to breathe, for the characters to breathe, for them to make their own decisions. And that's what I really like in my writing process, is when a character tells me what's going to happen. So part of my writing process was to create a Pinterest board of inspiration. So sort of how I saw the characters and what some of the locations look like. So I like things like coming to a garden like this with big leaves, because I feel like obviously they're normal because they're here and we're in New York City, but I feel like if I were to actually walk through an enchanted forest, I would find things like this, or even those purple plants back there. So coming to a place like this is really nice.
Alexandra, you have the floor.
So I am rereading the first chapter from the novel that I'm writing. I rewrote it. I've been doing an internship with a literary agent, and I told him about the idea and he really liked it and told me I could query him with it if I wanted to after the internship. So now I'm like, I kind of have to write the book. So yeah, this is the first chapter. It's not that I'd never been kissed before. In fact, my mother used to kiss me all the time. On the forehead, on the cheeks. It was one of the things that irritated my father to no end, as he worried about me becoming too soft. So I was no stranger to it. But, were I being completely honest, I'd never truly been kissed. Not with lips silky soft, firm but yielding, that left mine tingling. Heat shot through my veins, threatening to overload my system as liquid fire pooled in the pit of my stomach. A moment longer and I was certain I would explode. My other senses began to awaken slowly, breathing in hints of sandalwood and spice, relishing in the earthy aromas. My tongue darted out, surprised to find hints of cinnamon lingering in the corners of my lips. My hand shook as I cupped a strong, unexpectedly rough jaw. Tiny hairs tickled my palm as I traced a path up into a thick mop of silky curls. Frustration kicked in the back of my throat as I felt them still. I grabbed hold for better purchase, wanting more. I wanted to lose myself in these lips, forget myself in this kiss, but the gentle pressure of their lips against mine had stopped. Frowning, I opened my eyes. Deep chocolate wells stared back. Uncertainty creased into the corners, but it was the molten heat that caused me to momentarily forget how to breathe. All long eyelashes and thick brows spoke to a savage beauty that cut me to the quick as my gaze traced from angled cheekbones down aquiline nose to softly parted lips. It was only then, as I bemoaned their loss like the last drops of water in the desert, that realization struck. I'd kissed a boy. A tiny yelp slipped free as my fist connected with his nose. "Son of a!" he shouted, head snapping back, then doubling forward as he staggered back. I scrambled out of bed, my pulse quickened and erratic. I willed my shaky limbs to cooperate as I wobbled to the far corner of the room. I hadn't meant to hurt the lip snatcher, but he'd caught me off guard. I ignored the pang of guilt as he rubbed at his nose. Why should I feel bad? He was the one taking advantage of the situation, not me. Not to mention we were both... I frowned. The last thing I remembered... I cried out as broken images flashed through my mind. Fire, fear, and blood. My mother, full of sadness as we embraced for the last time, right before I was ripped from her arms. My father, soared high as he fought to protect us against men who'd sworn their loyalty to him. I sank to my knees, hands pressed tight to my ears as terrified screams echoed. But nothing I did stopped the onslaught as I fought to separate the horrible memories from my reality. I ignored the tears as devastation crushed me anew, and I felt myself lose them all over again. Colors bled and lines wavered as my vision blurred. With every breath, the walls pressed closer until there was pressure enough to pop. With a strangled cry, I bolted from the room, from the house, the door rattling on its hinges. Outside, the world was bright and unfamiliar. The trees sparkled like emeralds in the sun, but darkness hinted at the tips of their leaves. Long branches like bewitched fingers reaching forward to pull me back under. The sun shone brilliant and pure, shedding light on the tattered cottage from whence I had emerged. I recognized nothing, and it was then that I realized I was completely and utterly alone. "Are you all right?" With a start, I turned to find the lip snatcher standing mere feet away. He was even more devastating in the afternoon light. His curls appeared dipped in gold, complemented by the rich burgundy of his matching tunic and trousers. He stood tall, broad, and at ease. He fingered his nose, wincing at the bruising that was beginning to show. I didn't mean to frighten you, Princess. Princess, I interrupted. Yeah, I mean, I guess I shouldn't assume. Theoretically, you could just be a young maiden, but I don't know many maidens that get put under sleeping curses. Usually it's princesses who've offended someone powerful. I haven't offended anyone, I snapped, and I'm not a princess. Okay, he shrugged. A lady then. What should I call you? I'm not a lady either, I said, throwing my hands up. It was then that I caught a glimpse of just how dainty they looked. Gone were the thicker, knuckled appendages replaced with thin, tapered fingers. My palms were smooth and soft without a callus in sight. My nails were clear, pink, and a hair's breadth too long. A wave of panic began to blossom, and I didn't know if I could stop it. It was as if someone had chopped off my hands and replaced them with a stranger's. They were beautifully feminine, but they weren't mine. Where had mine gone? I scrunched my eyes closed, thinking back as far as I could to the moments leading up to my enchantment, but the details were hazy. I ran a hand through my hair, hoping to temper some of my frustration. Instead of slipping cleanly through, my fingers tangled in a mass of thick curls and frizz. What have you done? I said, turning my full attention to him. Is this a joke? What are you talking about? I felt along my head with both hands. Where before my hair had been cropped close on top and barely there on the sides, I yanked on what now seemed to be a head full of frizzy waves and spirals pulled up into a ponytail. Pain shot through my roots as I tried to pull it off. Princess, stop calling me that! I tore back inside the cottage, upturning baskets and opening trunks. I rifled through every nook and cranny until finally I came across a personal mirror. The reflection shook as I took in the stranger who stared back. The eyes were still brown, lashes thick and dark, but the brows were thinner, more elegant. The nose was softer, upturned at the end, small and button-like. Where before had been lips thin and uncomplicated, sat a full pouty mouth, the deep red of beet juice. My chocolate complexion remained unchanged, but my neck had thinned into a more elegant expression of its former self. Mortification clawed at my face as I trailed the mirror further down, taking in the green dress and the bodice fitted over my chest that swelled each time I drew breath. I sucked in air as the room spun around me. The me I'd known for the first, the only 16 years of my life was gone, and in his place stood a strange, unfamiliar girl ready to hijack his very existence. I struggled to make sense of how completely my world had been turned upside down. Princess.
Voiceover, man, audiobook. I was into it. That was good.
You have a very good use of metaphors. Like, really good. And I think that in the beginning, I wasn't expecting it because you didn't give it to us, like in the first couple sentences. And then it was like, it seemed like maybe like a paragraph long. I can't see it, but it seems like it was like a paragraph long of metaphors, and then it jumped back into not having it, and then it jumped back into having it, which works. I think it worked in the beginning. It was kind of jarring in some places. I think you could use less. But I think you painted a very good picture of this 16-year-old and having her first kiss, which, as I'm listening to it, as I said earlier, like, I don't ever remember being kissed like that. Like, those are some, like, really intense emotions from a kiss, you know? And I think that you described it very well.
Where I got a little confused was when you were talking about the tragedy of her family. I mean, I liked it, but then I wasn't ready for you to go where you went. There was like two stories almost. I mean, I like both of them. But just confused. I would say, for this reading, I would take that part out. Just that. That's the only criticism.
Were you trying to let us know how she got to where she...
Kind of, yeah. It's like a flashback moment to what happens before. So this is the story that he had mentioned that's a fantasy that's loosely based on Sleeping Beauty. So the boy it's actually a boy, it's not a girl. He's a prince, and his parents, the king and queen, there's a revolt, they get killed, which you later find out was by the king's brother. And so the prince is saved, but in order to keep him safe, he's not only enchanted by a sleeping curse, but he's also turned into a girl. Because everybody's looking for a prince, no one's looking for a princess. So the person who comes to who wakes him up is also a prince. But he sees a princess, so he kisses her, because that's how you wake somebody up from a sleeping enchantment.
Got you, because I got kind of confused.
It's like, it sounded like the kiss was wanted, but then it was stolen almost.
Right,
Like it was
right.
like it was a wanted kiss, but a violation in it.
Yes.
I want y'all to understand what's going on now. The guy who has been changed into a girl has been kissed by another guy,
Yeah,
and she or he enjoyed it.
enjoyed it.
Oh, so we're moving into a whole different dimension.
Right. So, the moment that the book starts is actually the moment that he wakes up from the sleeping enchantment. So it's not that he's just like in the middle of kissing someone and he loves it. Like, that's how he's woken up. And so before this moment, he's been asleep for like 18 years.
And
Can I
I
ask you a
kind of
question?
thought he was.
So there's no
I
frogs
thought-
in this at all, right?
No what?
No frogs? There's no frogs.
I thought that they were in a coma, and the kiss, you know,
Right.
because they say you can hear when you're in a coma, you know. So
Right.
I'm thinking, is this person in a coma and being kissed and no, like,
Right.
you know, wow,
And that's why it
this
comes
is
from
the moment
Right.
that I've been waiting for, you know. So that's, I thought they were in a coma, really.
So I guess it's kind of like, what can you do to make that clear so there aren't all these like different interpretations of what you know
Right.
is supposed to be happening.
Happening.
I think that it's a very specific type of story in that this boy has been turned into a girl, but I also think it will be relatable in terms of liking someone you think you shouldn't, right? In this case, it happens to be a boy liking a boy liking a girl that he doesn't know is a boy, right? And that's where their tension comes from. But I think that overall it will be relatable to people who like someone who maybe they should. Because I think that like it's one of those things, one of those topics that people root for, right? Like recently we had that movie Love, Simon about a young boy who was outed against his will and everybody in the entire school was rooting for him. Like I like men, but I root for those people who struggle to be happy with the person that they think they're supposed to be with, especially in the face of adversity. So I think with something like this, people are just going to be looking for two strong characters to get together regardless of all that. The entire book is about this character's struggle. Do I get myself turned back into a boy and regain my kingdom that is suffering under my uncle?
That's
or
great.
do I stay a princess with this man that I am falling for? Like that is that's the internal struggle throughout the entire book.
What I think the gap would fill in for me would be, once he wakes up, is he used to being a girl or is he still,
No.
he's a boy?
Right.
So
That's
okay,
the gap.
so maybe I need to make it more clear, but he thinks he's a boy. He wakes up fully prepared to be a boy because that's what he is, a boy through and through. So when he sees that his hands look a little different and his hair is long and it's not what he's used to, he starts getting worried, right? And then he looks in the mirror and he's like, holy shit, I'm a girl, right? And that's what he'll be working through. So he recognizes that there are some benefits. I think what will happen is that he recognizes the benefits to his current situation as being a girl, but he also learns things about being a girl that he didn't know before, about how as a woman traveling on your own, you're vulnerable, right? That's never something that he would have noticed or considered as a man.
So this character, sorry, is actually not transgender.
Yes,
This character,
no.
it's almost like a
That's what
freaky.
I
Have you seen the movie
Yeah,
Freaky
Freaky
Friday?
Friday.
You wake up in someone else's body.
Right.
This is not.
Exactly.
This is not
Yeah.
a focus of gender identity.
No, this is not, he
cool
was
story.
a boy and now he thinks he's a girl.
Exactly.
He is
It's a
physically
cool
a girl,
fantasy
but he's
story.
still himself.
The story just happens to be, if I'm sitting in the audience and I happen to be gay, I'm gonna say, oh wow, I like the way they uniquely interpreted, me making this, that's me. Or if I'm sitting in the audience and I have to make a choice about whether I want to remain rich or poor, remain rich and be miserable because nobody likes me, because I got all this money and I'm just spending on me, Or do I want to be poor where everyone likes me because I'm giving, I'm kind? Then somebody isn't going to be happy with it. So I'm just saying, I look at it as we're making a choice here. Whether you're trying to say, well, the choice is I have to be gay, or maybe I was gay before I got enchanted. You know, maybe I really did like boys. You know, now that's a different story. You know, like now I'm enchanted now, but maybe, you know, maybe I really was a gay person, or maybe I was really, you know, it's not about that. It's about just making a choice.
Isn't he falling in love with the prince as a girl, as a woman?
As a boy.
So
he was turned into a woman.
He was turned into a woman, but he still sees
He's
the
still
world
him.
for the most part through
Inside.
inside as he was.
Okay.
Right.
But
as a
he
boy.
is falling in love with him.
Right.
With a boy.
The
Another
conflict
boy.
is that
Okay.
the prince is falling in love with him as a girl.
But the question is, throughout
That's
the book,
a
is he
story,
going to
though.
struggle with his identity of being a homosexual man? Will he go? Does he go through
That's
that?
another story.
Or
So
I
he
was
will.
wondering because
Right.
the
So
focus is not
there's
that.
expectations. You're a prince. You become the king. You have to marry.
Yes.
Right. You have to produce a future heir. All of that plays a
Right.
role into his acceptance or non-acceptance of his feelings for this other person.
Can he become unenchanted?
Yes.
Oh, couldn't he be?
But who put the enchantment on
So-
him? I mean, am I getting ahead of the
So
story?
you're getting to like the very end of the story.
If he becomes unenchanted,
Right.
So he just changed.
isn't that like a form of betrayal to?
Yes.
Okay, I told you. Okay.
Yes.
I feel like it
yes.
has various elements to it, which could be very interesting.
I agree.
And even
I agree.
as I'm like listening to everyone, I'm thinking of Big.
Yeah.
Right.
That thing. It talks about the choices another person was talking about. It talks about seeing the world through what you used to be.
Right.
So I feel like you were touching on a lot of things, and if you write it and you write it clearly,
Right.
that eliminates all of this like confusion that's going on, then it would be a very powerful book.
All right, let's give her a hand.
Excellent.
That's a movie.
Excellent.
Alexandra, as I've said before, you just got us kicked out of the Bible Belt. We're not going to be carrying this story.
I hope that you found our presentation enlightening, entertaining, and most importantly, educational. Watch us next time when we will showcase.
I am Celeste Rita Baker, and I'm going to read a story for you called Single Entry.
Before closing, I want to thank the New York Public Library. Their branches have been gracious hosts and allow us to meet regularly. Should you like more information about the Harlem Neighborhood Writers or to become a member, contact us via the information provided at the closing of the show. Remember, it's free to join and all are welcome. Who knows? Maybe we will be showcasing you. See you next time. The Harlem Renaissance lives on.